The stars twinkled coldly in the viewport as Xyler ran a final systems check on his scout vessel. The KRYL Armada waited silently at the edge of the solar system, their massive ships hovering like predators watching prey. Xyler felt nothing as he contemplated his mission. Emotions had been purged from his training, deemed inefficient and dangerous by KRYL Command. Initiating final approach sequence, Xyler spoke into his recorder. Target Earth. Mission parameters: infiltrate, observe, assess threat level and resource potential. Report findings to Fleet Commander X9. His ship hummed with perfectly calibrated energy as he activated the stealth systems. The KRYL prided themselves on logical perfection and technological superiority. Their society had eliminated the chaotic variables of emotion and sentiment centuries ago, creating what they considered the perfect civilization based on pure rationality and efficiency. Xyler was the product of elite training, chosen for his analytical capabilities and unwavering loyalty to the KRYL imperative. His physiology had been enhanced to survive Earth conditions, and his mind programmed with extensive knowledge of Earth languages and customs. The disguise matrix would handle the rest, creating a perfect human facade. Primitive detection systems bypassed, he noted coolly as his ship slipped past Earth's satellite network. His vessel was designed to be invisible to the rudimentary technologies of humans. Selecting landing zone in isolated rural area to minimize observation probability. The ship's computer had identified an optimal location, a small, peculiar town called Millfield in what humans designated as the American Midwest. The location was sufficiently remote, yet connected enough to allow for comprehensive behavioral study of the species. As Xyler began atmospheric entry, the ship's sensors detected an anomaly, an unexpected electromagnetic storm front moving rapidly across his descent path. The KRYL scout frowned. This phenomenon hadn't appeared in any of the predictive models. Warning: atmospheric electrical disturbance detected, the ship's AI announced. Unusual intensity. Recommend alternate landing trajectory. Recalculate and implement, Xyler commanded. But before the course correction could complete, a massive electromagnetic surge engulfed the scout vessel. Alarms blared as systems failed in cascading sequence. The disguise matrix fluctuated wildly. The long-range communication array overloaded with a shower of sparks, and navigation controls became unresponsive. Mayday, Xyler stated calmly despite the chaos around him. Scout Vessel KS-117 experiencing critical systems failure. Attempting emergency landing protocols. The ship plummeted through the turbulent atmosphere, its sleek form buffeted by winds and electromagnetic interference. Xyler's training kept him focused as he manually wrestled for control, managing to direct the failing vessel toward an empty field outside Millfield's boundaries. The impact was jarring, but controlled enough to prevent catastrophic damage. Emergency stabilizers engaged at the last moment, preventing a fiery explosion that would have announced his arrival to the entire region. Instead, the ship burrowed into soft earth, coming to rest in a small crater that it promptly camouflaged with remaining stealth technology. Xyler ran a damage assessment. The results were concerning. Long-range communications, inoperable. Propulsion system, severely damaged. Disguise matrix, partially functional but unstable. Most critical systems would require extensive repairs before the ship would be spaceworthy again. New mission parameters, he dictated to his still-functioning personal recorder. Repair scout vessel. Maintain cover identity. Continue observation mission while awaiting extraction opportunity. He activated the disguise matrix, wincing slightly at the unstable energy fluctuations. His KRYL form, tall, with iridescent pale blue skin and large, multifaceted eyes, shimmered and transformed. The result, when he checked the reflection panel, was imperfect. The human disguise had several noticeable flaws. His skin appeared slightly too smooth and uniform in texture. His movements were precisely calibrated, but lacked the natural micro-variations of genuine human motion. And most problematically, The Matrix had selected an eclectic mixture of human clothing styles that didn't cohere to any recognizable fashion pattern. A tweed jacket with bright tropical shorts, mismatched formal shoes, and what appeared to be a child's bow tie. Disguise functionality at 73%, Zyler noted, within acceptable parameters for preliminary contact. He gathered emergency supplies and his observation equipment before sealing the vessel. The ship's remaining stealth systems would keep it hidden while he conducted repairs during nighttime hours. During daylight, he would need to blend with the local population and gather data. Zyler emerged from the concealed ship into the cool night air, immediately recording atmospheric composition readings and sensory data. He oriented himself toward the distant lights of Millfield and began walking with mathematically perfect strides. The road into town was quiet, illuminated only by moonlight until headlights appeared in the distance. Zyler quickly analyzed potential scenarios and determined that a stranded traveler narrative would provide optimal cover. He positioned himself at the roadside and waited. The approaching vehicle slowed, an older pickup truck with a creaking suspension system and suboptimal combustion efficiency. The window rolled down, revealing an elderly human male with facial features that indicated advanced age. "You all right there, son?" the man called out, his voice registering concern, an emotional response Zyler found inefficient but useful for his current predicament. "I'm experiencing vehicle failure approximately 2.7 kilometers from this location," Zyler replied with precise diction. "Assistance would be appreciated." The old man's eyebrows rose. "Well, you talk funny, but you look like you could use a ride. Hop in." Zyler assessed that this was a fortuitous encounter and climbed into the passenger seat, noting the vehicle's primitive mechanics and the various personal artifacts scattered throughout. Pictures affixed to the dashboard, small decorative items hanging from the rearview mirror, items that served no functional purpose. "Name's Hank," the old man said. "Hank Wilkins. Been farming outside Millfield my whole life." "You got a name, stranger?" "I am designated," Zyler caught himself. "My name is Zyler. I am a research scientist specializing in anthropological studies." Hank chuckled. "Well, you came to the right place if you're looking to study folks. Millfield's got some characters, that's for sure. Where you staying?" "I have not yet secured accommodations," Zyler replied truthfully. "Well, town's got one motel, the Starlight. Nothing fancy, but it's clean. My sister Martha runs it. I could drop you there." As they drove into Millfield, Zyler observed and cataloged everything. The settlement was small by human standards, approximately 2,500 inhabitants based on his pre-mission briefing. The central area contained simple commercial structures, most darkened at this hour except for an establishment labeled Lou's Diner that still showed interior illumination and several humans engaged in communal sustenance consumption. "That there's our main street," Hank explained unnecessarily. "Not much happening this time of night, but during the day, it's the heart of Millfield. We're having our annual Harvest Festival this weekend. Whole town turns out for it." "Fascinating," Zyler responded automatically while recording mental notes on social gathering patterns and tribal celebration rituals. The Starlight Motel was a single-story structure with 12 identical units arranged in a linear pattern. Zyler noted the inefficient design, but said nothing as Hank escorted him to a small office where an elderly female, presumably the referenced Martha, was engaged with a primitive information display device. "Martha, got a guest for you," Hank announced. "This here's Zyler. He's a scientist of some kind. Had car trouble out on County Road 16. Martha looked up, her eyes widening slightly as she took in Zyler's unusual appearance. "Well, welcome to Millfield, Doctor. Don't get many visitors this time of year." "I am not a doctor," Zyler corrected precisely, "but I thank you for your greeting." Martha and Hank exchanged glances that Zyler's training identified as conveying confusion and mild amusement, emotional states he cataloged for later analysis. "How long will you be staying with us?" Martha asked as she pushed a registration form across the counter. Zyler calculated the likely repair timeline for his vessel. "Approximately 14 Earth days, depending on variables beyond my current predictive capacity." Another confused look from Martha. "Well, we charge by the night. but I can give you our weekly rate if you're staying that long. The transaction was completed with primitive currency Xyler had been supplied with for his mission. Martha provided him with a small metal object she identified as a key to Unit Number 8. Breakfast is served from 6 to 9, she informed him. Nothing fancy, but it'll keep you going. If you need anything, just pick up the phone in your room. Xyler nodded and proceeded to the designated unit. The accommodations were rudimentary but sufficient. A sleeping platform, hygiene facilities, and basic information technology. He immediately began setting up his observation equipment and preparing reports on his initial findings. Preliminary observations. Human settlement Millfield exhibits inefficient design principles but appears to function despite this disadvantage. Inhabitants display unnecessary communication patterns and engage in information exchange with no apparent productive purpose. The individual designated Hank utilized approximately 87% more words than required to convey essential information. For the next several hours, Xyler analyzed Earth transmissions available through the primitive device labeled television and prepared for the next day's infiltration activities. He would need to establish a plausible cover story and begin more thorough observations of human social structures. Morning brought new challenges as Xyler encountered multiple humans in the motel's communal eating area. His appearance continued to draw curious glances, which he noted as potential security concerns. An adolescent human approached his table as he methodically consumed the provided nutrition. "You dress funny," the young human stated without preamble. "Are you from Europe or something?" Xyler analyzed the query and determined a partial truth would be most effective. "I'm indeed from elsewhere. My customs and appearance may seem unusual to you." The child, a female approximately 12 Earth years in age, tilted her head. "I'm Lily. My mom works here. Why are you in Millfield?" "Nobody ever comes here. I am conducting anthropological research," Xyler replied. "The study of human customs and behaviors." Lily's face brightened with interest. "You're studying us? Cool. Can I help? I know everything about everyone in this town." Xyler recognized an unexpected data collection opportunity. "Your assistance would be valuable. What information can you provide about local customs and behavioral patterns?" For the next 42 minutes, Lily provided a continuous stream of information about Millfield and its inhabitants, most of it centered around social dynamics that Xyler found bewilderingly complex and illogical. She detailed intricate relationship structures, historical grievances between families, and elaborate social hierarchies that seemed to serve no functional purpose. "And Mrs. Abernathy hasn't spoken to Mr. Peterson since the incident with the pie contest 3 years ago, even though everyone knows she secretly still drops off casseroles when he's sick," Lily explained. "And then there's Principal Wilson, who's in love with the librarian, but won't ask her out because his mother doesn't approve, but the librarian knows and keeps finding excuses to visit the school anyway." Xyler struggled to process the intricate web of emotions and irrational behaviors. These relationship structures appear counterproductive to efficient social functioning. Why maintain connections that create conflict? Lily laughed. "That's just how people are. It's complicated, but that's what makes it interesting. Hey, you should come to the festival this weekend. Everyone will be there, and you can see it all for yourself." The Harvest Festival would indeed provide an efficient observation opportunity, Xyler decided. "I will attend this social gathering. Thank you for the information, young human." "It's Lily," she corrected with a laugh. "Not young human. You're really weird, but I like you." As Lily departed, Xyler made extensive notes on this exchange. The child had provided valuable intelligence while demonstrating the puzzling human tendency toward unnecessary social bonding. Her statement of liking him, a preference with no logical basis, exemplified the irrationality that made humans so inferior to the KRYLL. Yet he couldn't deny that her information would be useful for his mission. Perhaps these emotional weaknesses could be exploited when the KRYLL fleet eventually arrived. The following days established a pattern. During daylight hours, Xyler explored Millfield, recording observations and interacting with locals under his research scientist cover. At night, He returned to his damaged vessel to conduct repairs, a process proceeding more slowly than anticipated due to the unusual electromagnetic properties of the crash site. His interactions with humans grew increasingly complex. Martha insisted on providing him with extra food items he hadn't requested. Hank regularly offered transportation services without compensation. The child Lily sought him out daily to provide unsolicited information and ask bewildering questions about his origins. During his 5th day of observation, Zyler encountered a new variable, an adult female human who introduced herself as Eleanor Parker, the local librarian. "You must be our visiting researcher," she said, approaching him in the establishment called Lou's Diner. "Lily's been telling everyone about you. Mind if I join you?" Zyler calculated that refusing would draw unwanted attention. "You may occupy this adjacent seating unit." Eleanor smiled, a facial expression Zyler had determined indicated positive emotional response, and sat across from him. "So what brings an anthropologist to our little town? We're hardly National Geographic material. Small communities often preserve cultural behaviors in their purest form." Zyler recited from his cover story. "The annual harvest celebration presents an optimal observation opportunity." "That makes sense," Eleanor said, though her expression indicated mild skepticism. "Our festival is pretty special, I'll give you that. Been a tradition here for over 100 years. Their conversation continued as Eleanor consumed her meal. Zyler found her questions increasingly difficult to deflect while maintaining his cover identity. She displayed intelligence levels significantly above the Millfield average and a peculiar ability to detect inconsistencies in his responses. "You know," she said finally, "you have the most unusual way of speaking. Where did you say you were from originally?" "I did not specify my origin location," Zyler replied carefully. "It is not relevant to my research parameters." Eleanor's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you never talk about yourself? Just observing, never participating. Don't you find that creates a distance that might affect your research?" The question contained a logical argument Zyler hadn't anticipated. "Clarify your reasoning." "Well," Eleanor continued, "anthropology isn't just about watching from the outside. It's about experiencing the culture you're studying. Participation gives insights observation alone can't provide." Zyler processed this statement, finding it unexpectedly resonant with KRYLL intelligence gathering protocols. "Your argument has merit. How would you suggest I participate?" Eleanor's expression brightened. "The festival committee could always use another volunteer. We're setting up tomorrow morning in the town square. It would give you a perfect insider's view of how everything works." Before his logical circuits could formulate a reason to refuse, Zyler found himself agreeing to this proposal. The decision was tactically sound. Deeper infiltration would yield more valuable data. Yet something about the interaction left his neural pathways processing in unusual patterns. The following morning found Zyler helping to construct primitive temporary structures in the town's central gathering space under Eleanor's direction. The physical labor was inefficient, with many tasks that could have been accomplished by simple machines instead assigned to humans working in groups. More puzzling was the continuous verbal exchange that accompanied the work. Jokes, personal anecdotes, complaints, and encouragement flowing in patterns that seemed to have little connection to the tasks at hand. "You're awfully quiet," a large human male named Thomas observed as they positioned a wooden platform. "Not much for small talk, huh?" "I do not understand the purpose of communication unrelated to task completion," Zyler admitted. Thomas laughed. "That's the whole point. Makes the work go faster when you're enjoying yourself. Here, hand me that hammer, and I'll tell you about the time Mayor Wilson got stuck in the dunk tank." As the day progressed, Zyler found himself incorporated into more complex social interactions. He was invited to share the communal meal the workers had brought, a chaotic, inefficient distribution of nutrition that somehow resulted in everyone receiving adequate sustenance amid conversation and laughter. To his surprise, by day's end, several humans addressed him by name and included him in their communication patterns as if he were part of their social unit. This development was unexpected, but potentially useful for deeper infiltration. That evening, as Zyler worked on his ship repairs, He found his thought processes repeatedly returning to the day's events rather than focusing on the technical tasks. The behavior patterns he had observed defied logical analysis. Humans working harder because of emotional connections, performing tasks less efficiently, yet achieving results through mutual support, sacrificing personal advantage for group cohesion. These observations contradict Kryll's assessment of human weakness. He recorded in his log. Emotional connections appear to create strength in certain contexts despite their inefficiency. Further study required. A weak signal from the Kryll fleet interrupted his recording, a standard check-in request that he could barely receive through the damaged communication array. He sent a brief, encoded response indicating mission continuation without complications, omitting the damage to his vessel and the complexities of his infiltration experience. As the Harvest Festival approached, Xyler found himself increasingly integrated into the community's preparation activities. Lily had appointed herself as unofficial guide. Eleanor continued to engage him in challenging conversations about human behavior, and even Hank had begun treating him as a regular presence rather than an outsider. "You're catching on," Eleanor told him as they arranged display areas for local craft items. "A few days ago, you looked completely lost when someone made a joke. Now you're almost smiling." "I am adapting to local behavioral norms," Xyler explained, uncomfortable with her observation of changes he hadn't intended to implement. Eleanor studied him for a moment. "There's something very different about you, Xyler. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's like you're seeing everything for the first time." The statement was dangerously close to truth. Xyler quickly redirected. All researchers must approach their subjects with fresh perspective. "Maybe," Eleanor conceded, "but with you it's something more. Like you're not just studying us. You're discovering something about yourself, too." The comment activated alert protocols in Xyler's neural pathways. Was his cover being compromised? Was he failing to maintain proper Kryll attachment? He resolved to increase vigilance against the subtle influence of human social dynamics. On the morning of the festival, Xyler awoke to an unexpected sound, a rapid knocking at his accommodation door. Opening it revealed Lily, her facial expression displaying signs of distress. "Xyler, you have to help," she exclaimed without greeting protocols. "The creek's flooding from last night's rain, and the water's heading straight for the festival grounds. Dad says it'll ruin everything if we don't do something fast." Xyler quickly processed this information. The festival's disruption was irrelevant to his mission, yet the distress it was causing in his primary information source created a conflicting imperative. What assistance is required? He found himself asking. Minutes later, Xyler was at the creek with dozens of Millfield residents, observing as the normally small water flow had become a substantial surge threatening the lower festival grounds. Humans were frantically filling containers called sandbags and positioning them in inefficient defensive patterns. "We're losing ground," Hank shouted over the water's noise. "Need to redirect the flow, not just block it." Xyler's Kryll training included advanced hydrology. He quickly calculated flow patterns, erosion probabilities, and optimal intervention points. Without fully analyzing why, he stepped forward. "Your defensive barrier is improperly positioned," he announced. "Water force will undermine this configuration within 37 minutes. A diversion channel at coordinates." He stopped, recalibrating to human terminology. "If we dig a channel there and reinforce this section here, we can direct the water away from the festival grounds." The humans paused, looking skeptical until Eleanor spoke up. "He's right. That could work." What followed was a curious experience for Xyler. Under his precise direction, the humans reorganized their efforts with surprising efficiency. He found himself working alongside them, physically participating in tasks he could have simply supervised. The sensation of mud on his hands, the physical exertion, the coordinated movement with others, all created neural responses he had never experienced. 3 hours later, the creek water flowed harmlessly through a newly created channel, bypassing the festival grounds entirely. The humans exhibited extreme positive emotional responses, with many engaging in physical contact with Xyler through the ritualistic patting of shoulders and back. "You saved the festival," Lily declared, her small arms wrapping around his waist in the gesture called hugging, a physical intrusion Xyler found himself not objecting to. "I merely applied basic hydrological principles," he stated, uncomfortable with the attention. "Don't be modest," Eleanor said, her hand briefly touching his arm and creating an unexpected neural response. That was brilliant thinking. How did a cultural anthropologist learn so much about water management? The question presented a security risk. Xyler formulated a plausible explanation involving interdisciplinary research experience, noting with concern how easily the fabrication came to him now. His KRYLL training emphasized absolute factual reporting. This growing facility with creative information adjustment was troubling. More troubling still was the strange satisfaction he experienced from the human's gratitude, an emotional response that had no place in KRYLL psychology. As the festival began that afternoon, Xyler found his observation protocols increasingly compromised by subjective experiences. The festival itself was a riot of sensory input. Music playing from multiple sources, humans engaged in dancing rituals, elaborate food preparation and consumption, competitive activities with no apparent survival benefit, and constant social interaction. Rather than maintaining analytical distance, Xyler found himself drawn into participation. Lily insisted he attempt a game involving throwing projectiles at stacked objects. Eleanor persuaded him to consume 7 distinct food items, each creating unique gustatory experiences his KRYLL physiology had never processed. Hank introduced him to numerous community members, each greeting him with surprising warmth. "Having fun?" Eleanor asked, finding him observing a dance performance. "Fun is not an objective of my research," Xyler replied automatically. "But are you experiencing it anyway?" she pressed, her expression suggesting she already knew the answer. Xyler hesitated, his internal diagnostic routines detecting alarming anomalies in his neural patterns. "I am experiencing unusual responses to these activities." "Good unusual or bad unusual?" Eleanor asked, her voice softer. Before he could formulate a response, a commotion erupted across the festival grounds. Xyler's enhanced senses detected multiple humans expressing alarm, centered around a structure that appeared to be malfunctioning. A tall mechanical rotating device carrying humans in suspended compartments. "The Ferris wheel's stuck with kids at the top," someone shouted. "Controls aren't responding." Xyler observed as humans rushed toward the scene, their coordination breaking down under stress. The primitive mechanical device had clearly experienced a power system failure, leaving several young humans stranded at its apex, approximately 15 meters above ground level. "Can anyone help?" A desperate voice called out, a female Xyler recognized as a food preparation worker from Lou's Diner, her offspring presumably among those trapped. Without conscious decision, Xyler moved forward, calculating structural stress points and electrical system configurations. The device was absurdly simple compared to KRYLL technology, its malfunction easily diagnosable to his enhanced senses. "The primary power coupler has overheated and disengaged safety protocols," he announced, approaching the control panel. "A manual override is possible, but requires access to the junction box at the base of the central support." The human operator looked at him in confusion. "Are you an engineer or something?" "Or something," Eleanor answered for him, appearing at his side. "What do you need, Xyler?" What followed was another instance of cooperation that defied KRYLL understanding of human capabilities. Following Xyler's precise instructions, several humans quickly located access panels and tools. Others formed a communication chain to reassure the trapped children. Within minutes, Xyler had bypassed the failed components and implemented a manual descent procedure. As the compartments slowly returned to ground level and children reunited with their parents, Xyler found himself the center of attention again, this time from a much larger portion of the community. The expressions of gratitude were overwhelming, creating cascading anomalies in his emotional suppression systems. That's twice in one day you've saved us, Mayor Wilson declared, approaching with an outstretched hand. Millfield owes you a debt, Doctor. He's not a doctor, Lily corrected promptly. Well, whatever you are, you're a godsend, the mayor continued. First the creek, now this. It's like you dropped from the sky just when we needed you. The statement was uncomfortably close to literal truth. Zyler felt Eleanor's gaze on him, her expression thoughtful. Just fortunate to have relevant knowledge, Zyler managed to respond. As the festival continued into evening, Zyler found the humans treating him differently. Not as an outsider, but as an accepted, even valued member of their social group. He was included in conversations, offered special food items, introduced to family members, and consistently thanked for his assistance. The experience created profound confusion in his KRYLL programming. These humans, supposedly inferior beings scheduled for potential resource harvesting or elimination, were displaying traits his species had discarded as weaknesses: gratitude, community, celebration of individual contribution, emotional bonding, joy in shared experience. Yet these traits didn't appear to weaken them, as KRYLL philosophy insisted. Instead, they created strength through connection, resilience through mutual support, and a form of fulfillment Zyler had never observed in his logically perfect society. That night, returning to his damaged ship, Zyler received another signal from the KRYLL fleet, stronger this time and carrying specific instructions. A scout drone was being dispatched to investigate his extended mission time and lack of detailed reporting. It would arrive in approximately 72 hours, expecting a complete analysis of human capabilities and resource potential. For the first time in his existence, Zyler experienced a sensation his diagnostic systems identified as dread. The drone would expect information supporting the planned KRYLL intervention on Earth, data categorizing humans as inferior and exploitable. It would report any anomalies in Zyler's functioning, including the emotional responses he was now undeniably experiencing. The logical choice was clear: complete repairs on his communication systems, provide the expected report emphasizing human weaknesses, and resume his role as a loyal KRYLL observer. Yet as he worked through the night, his thoughts repeatedly returned to Eleanor's questioning gaze, Lily's trusting embrace, and the community that had so quickly accepted him despite his differences. The following day brought new complications. As Zyler walked through town, still processing his internal conflict, Eleanor approached him with purpose in her stride. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. Privately, she led him to the library, closed on post-festival day, and locked the door behind them. The building was silent, filled with physical information storage units Zyler found inefficient, but somehow appealing in their tangible permanence. "Who are you really?" Eleanor asked directly once they were seated in a quiet corner. "And don't give me the anthropologist story again. No anthropologist I've ever met can redesign water flow systems or repair complex machinery with a glance." Zyler's security protocols activated, calculating optimal denial strategies, yet he found himself unwilling to fabricate more falsehoods to this human who had shown him only truth and acceptance. "I cannot provide you with accurate information about my identity," he stated carefully, "because it would put you in danger, or us." Her perception was unsettlingly accurate. "Potentially both," Zyler admitted. Eleanor studied him for long moments. "You're not like anyone I've ever met. Sometimes it's almost like you're not." She hesitated, then continued more softly. "Not human at all." Warning signals cascaded through Zyler's neural network. His cover was compromised. KRYLL protocol demanded immediate extraction and potential elimination of the security breach. Instead, he heard himself ask, "If I were not human, would that concern you?" Eleanor's eyes widened slightly, but her voice remained calm. "That would depend on your intentions, I suppose. Are they harmful?" "They were not intended to be beneficial," Zyler answered truthfully. "But I find my initial assessment of your species requires significant revision." A long silence followed as Eleanor processed his words. "You're saying you're not human. I am not. And you came here to study us? Assess us. Correct." Eleanor took a deep breath. I should probably be terrified right now. But oddly enough, I'm not. Maybe because you've had multiple chances to harm us, and instead you've only helped. That has to mean something. Zyler's confusion deepened. Your response is not logical. You should be experiencing fear, alerting others to potential danger. Maybe humans aren't as logical as whatever you are, Eleanor said with a small smile. We tend to judge people, beings, by their actions, not just their origins. And your actions have been those of someone who cares, whether you recognize that or not. The conversation continued for 97 minutes as Zyler carefully revealed selected information about his presence without compromising KRYLL security entirely. Eleanor asked intelligent questions, expressed appropriate concerns, but never displayed the panic or hostility KRYLL analysis had predicted. So what happens now? She finally asked. Will others like you come? A preliminary investigative drone arrives in approximately 48 hours, Zyler admitted. It will expect my report on human capabilities and resource potential. Eleanor's expression darkened, and that report will determine whether we're seen as a threat or a potential resource, like some cosmic environmental impact assessment. An apt analogy, Zyler confirmed. And what will your reports say? She asked quietly. Zyler hesitated, his KRYLL loyalty programming clashing violently with newly developing neural pathways. I have not determined final assessment parameters. Eleanor leaned forward. Then let me help you determine them. Show me your world, Zyler, and I'll help you understand mine. Before you make a report that could affect all of humanity, shouldn't you have the complete picture? Her logic was impeccable, creating a justification for what Zyler already found himself wanting to do. What do you propose? Take me to your ship, Eleanor said simply. Show me what you are, what your people are. Help me understand. And in return, I'll help you understand what you've been missing about us. That night, Zyler led Eleanor to his concealed vessel, disabling the stealth systems briefly to allow her entry. Her reaction to the technology was not the fear or awe he had expected, but thoughtful curiosity, asking intelligent questions about function and purpose rather than expressing primitive wonderment. When he deactivated his human disguise, revealing his true KRYLL form, Eleanor's heart rate increased, but she maintained remarkable composure. You're beautiful, she said unexpectedly. Different, but beautiful. No KRYLL had ever been described in aesthetic terms before. The concept was foreign to their culture. Yet Zyler found the observation creating pleasant neural responses. For hours, they exchanged information. Zyler explaining KRYLL society's perfect logical structure, their technological advancement, their evolutionary abandonment of emotion as inefficient. Eleanor countered with humanity's chaotic but vibrant culture, their resilience through connection, and the power of emotional bonds to create meaning beyond mere survival. Your society sounds perfect in theory, Eleanor observed, but also empty. Do you ever feel joy, love, wonder? Such concepts were eliminated as counterproductive to optimal functioning, Zyler explained. Efficiency is our primary value. And yet, Eleanor challenged gently, in just days of being here, you've begun to experience those things, haven't you? I've seen it happening. When Lily hugs you, when you solve problems for people who needed help, when you tasted Mrs. Wilson's apple pie for the first time. Zyler couldn't deny the accuracy of her observation. I am experiencing system anomalies that correspond to your descriptions of emotional responses. They are not unpleasant. Eleanor smiled. That might be the most unemotional way possible of saying you're starting to feel things, and you like it. As dawn approached, Zyler reached a decision that his logical processors identified as rebellion, but his new emotional pathways recognized as necessary. The drone must not report accurate findings about Earth. You mean you're going to lie to your people? Eleanor asked. I will provide selective data, emphasizing factors that would make Earth an undesirable target, Zyler clarified. It is not technically deception, merely strategic information filtering. Eleanor's smile suggested she recognized the rationalization, but she didn't challenge it. So we have about 24 hours to prepare. What we need to do. The day that followed was the most unusual of Zyler's existence. Together with Eleanor, he modified his ship's sensor arrays to emphasize environmental factors that would appear hostile to KRYLL physiology. They prepared data packets highlighting human behaviors that would seem most chaotic and unpredictable to KRYLL analysts. Most crucially, they developed a strategy for managing the drone's brief visit to ensure it collected the specific information they wanted it to receive. "It's still a gamble," Eleanor said as evening approached. "If your people are as advanced as you say, won't they see through this?" "The drone's analysis capabilities are substantial but limited," Zyler explained. "It cannot process subjective experience, only objective data points. And it will not expect deception from a KRYLL operative. Because KRYLL don't lie," Eleanor noted. "Except you're about to. I am about to prioritize newly acquired data over previous programming," Zyler corrected, though he recognized the distinction was becoming meaningless. As night fell and the drone's arrival time approached, Eleanor insisted on remaining with him despite the potential danger. "I'm not leaving you to face this alone," she said simply when he suggested she return to safety in town. The drone arrived precisely on schedule, a sleek, spherical device approximately 1 meter in diameter that descended silently from the night sky and hovered before Zyler's ship. It scanned him, confirming his identity before initiating communication. "Scout Zyler, report mission status and preliminary findings," the drone requested in the KRYLL language, a series of precise, tonal variations Eleanor couldn't understand. For the next 47 minutes, Zyler presented his carefully prepared assessment. He transmitted selective sensor readings showing atmospheric components that, while harmless to humans, would require extensive KRYLL adaptation. He emphasized human unpredictability, emotional volatility, and tendency towards self-sacrificing behaviors that made them dangerous and unprofitable targets. "Humans possess primitive technology but exceptional adaptability," he reported. "They respond to threats with disproportionate force and unpredictable strategies." Resource extraction assessment, negative. Threat assessment, moderate but escalating rapidly if provoked. Recommended action, bypass and seek alternative targets in neighboring systems. The drone processed this information, its lights pulsing as it analyzed the data packets. Assessment contradicts preliminary scans from fleet observation. Clarified discrepancy. Fleet scans were conducted at distance, Zyler countered smoothly. Direct infiltration reveals defense capabilities concealed from long-range observation. Human emotional responses create unpredictable threat variables with high-risk coefficients. Eleanor watched tensely as the exchange continued, unable to understand the words but reading the increasing intensity in Zyler's posture. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, the drone's lights stabilized. Assessment accepted. Data will be transmitted to Fleet Command. Prepare for extraction upon completion of final report cycle. The drone ascended back into the night sky, disappearing from view within seconds. Eleanor released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Did it work? Initial assessment accepted, Zyler confirmed. Fleet Command will review complete data package, but preliminary recommendation to bypass Earth has been registered. So your people will leave us alone? Eleanor pressed. Probability is high, Zyler acknowledged. Resource-to-risk ratio is primary determinant of KRYLL expansion targeting. My report establishes unfavorable parameters. Relief washed over Eleanor's features, followed quickly by another emotion Zyler was learning to recognize, concern. And what about you? The drone mentioned extraction. You'll be leaving soon. The question created a profound contradiction in Zyler's systems. His duty to the KRYLL remained coded into his neural pathways. Yet the thought of returning to their coldly logical existence, abandoning the emotional connections he had formed in Millfield, created what humans would call pain. He hesitated, experiencing genuine uncertainty for the first time in his existence. I am required to complete final observations and submit conclusive reporting. Eleanor studied him intently. That's not what I asked, Xyler. Do you want to go back? No KRYLL had ever been asked about wants, only duties, functions, and optimal outcomes. The concept of personal desire was foreign to their collective mindset. Yet Xyler found an immediate answer forming in his newly developed emotional centers. I do not wish to return, he admitted, the words feeling like both betrayal and liberation. The experiences I have had here, the connections, the emotions, the purpose beyond mere function, I find them valuable in ways KRYLL philosophy cannot comprehend. Then stay, Eleanor said simply, reaching out to touch his arm, the first time she had initiated physical contact since seeing his true form. Millfield could use someone with your skills and knowledge. And I think you need what Millfield can give you too. The decision crystallized with surprising clarity. If I remain, I must sever all connection with the KRYLL. My ship contains technology that could be dangerous to humans if discovered, and my communication systems could potentially be tracked despite the interference from this region. So what would that mean practically? Eleanor asked. I would need to destroy my ship or render it permanently inoperable and undetectable, Xyler explained. I would commit to remaining in human form permanently. I would become one of you as much as is possible. Sounds like a big sacrifice, Eleanor observed. Xyler considered this. By KRYLL standards, yes. I would be abandoning perfect logical order for emotional chaos. But I find that chaos contains patterns of meaning my people have forgotten. Connection, growth, joy. Experiences worth more than mere efficiency. Eleanor smiled. That might be the most human thought I've ever heard. The following day, Xyler implemented his decision. Using his ship's remaining power, he initiated a controlled molecular breakdown sequence that would reduce the vessel to base elements that would be indistinguishable from natural soil compounds within days. He saved only a few essential components that could be safely adapted for human use. Medical technology that could benefit Millfield and knowledge storage devices containing information he valued. His final act was to transmit a terminal report to the KRYLL fleet, confirming his assessment of Earth as an unsuitable target and reporting catastrophic ship failure requiring emergence protocol. The emergence protocol, a KRYLL ritual as old as their space program, officially released him from service when return was impossible, a rare but accepted outcome for scouts in distant systems. With that transmission, Xyler, last of the KRYLL on Earth, ceased to exist in their records. In his place stood a somewhat unusual but increasingly well-integrated resident of Millfield, known for his technical skills, precise manner of speaking, and growing capacity for human connection. The transition was not without challenges. Xyler's understanding of human emotion remained incomplete, leading to occasional misunderstandings. His physical disguise, while functional, required regular maintenance and contained limitations he needed to carefully manage. And the habits of KRYLL thought, the drive toward perfect efficiency and logical order, sometimes clashed with the messy reality of human experience. Yet as weeks turned to months, Xyler found himself not merely adapting to human life, but thriving within it. His technical knowledge, once applied to assessing human weaknesses, now served to improve Millfield's infrastructure. The town's ancient water system was redesigned under his guidance. The electrical grid was optimized to prevent the brownouts that had plagued summer festivals for years. The school received technological upgrades that mystified but delighted the teaching staff. More importantly, Xyler developed relationships that would have been inconceivable in KRYLL society. Lily appointed herself as cultural guide, patiently explaining idioms, jokes, and social customs with the enthusiastic persistence only a child could maintain. Hank became a mentor in practical skills, teaching him to fish, repair engines, and appreciate the satisfaction of physical labor. Martha fussed over his unusual diet and thin frame, determined to put some meat on those bones through a relentless campaign of home-cooked meals. And Eleanor became something KRYLL language had no word for. Companion, friend, eventually something more. Their relationship evolved with a patient warmth that gave Xyler time to understand the complex emotions developing within him. She never pressed him to define what he felt, seeming to recognize that he was learning a new language of the heart as surely as he had once learned English. 6 months after his arrival, as Millfield prepared for its spring planting festival, Xyler stood on the hill overlooking the town. The lights below twinkled in the gathering dusk, each representing homes and lives now familiar to him. In the distance, the KRYLL fleet had long since departed this system, abandoning Earth as an undesirable target based on his carefully constructed deception. "Penny for your thoughts?" Eleanor's voice came from behind him as she climbed the hill to join him. "That's a human expression meaning." "I understand the idiom," Xyler interrupted with what had become his version of a smile. "I was calculating the astronomical probability of my arriving at this specific location in this specific time and the subsequent chain of improbabilities that led to my remaining here." Eleanor took his hand, a gesture that still created pleasant neural responses he hoped would never diminish. "In human terms, we call that luck. Or maybe fate. KRYLL would call it random chance, without meaning," Xyler noted. "They would see no purpose in unpredictable outcomes." "And what would Xyler call it?" she asked, her head tilting to study his expression in the fading light. He considered this carefully, wanting the precision that still characterized his thought processes. "I would call it finding where I belong when I wasn't aware I was searching." The KRYLL believe they achieve perfection by eliminating emotion and embracing pure logic. But I have discovered that perfection without connection is hollow. Efficiency without purpose is meaningless. Pretty profound for someone who couldn't understand a joke 6 months ago, Eleanor teased gently. "I still struggle with approximately 32% of human humor," Xyler acknowledged seriously, then caught himself. That was not intended to be funny. Eleanor laughed anyway, the sound filling him with warmth. "Come on, we're going to be late for the planning committee, and Mayor Wilson still thinks you hung the moon after you redesigned the town hall ventilation system." As they walked down the hill toward the lights of Millfield, his Millfield now, Xyler reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. He had come as an alien observer, cold and detached, sent to assess a species deemed inferior by his people. He remained as something neither fully KRYLL nor fully human, but perhaps something new and valuable precisely because of that duality. The scout sent to Earth had never wanted to leave, not because he had failed in his mission, but because he had succeeded in a way his people could never understand. He had discovered that connection was more powerful than perfection, that emotions created strength rather than weakness, and that the chaos of human experience contained a depth of meaning the ordered KRYLL existence could never achieve. And in that discovery, Xyler, once the perfect KRYLL scout, had found not just a new home, but a new self. One that looked toward the stars not with the cold calculation of a distant observer, but with the wonder and gratitude of someone who had found, at long last, where he truly belonged.